Did you see, Lindsey Graham just said of your remarks that you made in the Oval Office that if you keep talking like that, quote, this will be a disaster worse than Obama's decision to leave Iraq.
No, Lindsey Graham would like to stay in the Middle East for the next 1,000 years with thousands of soldiers and fighting other people's wars. I want to get out of the Middle East. I think Lindsey should focus right now on judiciary, like the Democrats, the do-nothing Democrats, as I call them, because they're doing nothing. They're getting nothing done. They're not getting USMCA done between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. They're getting nothing done. And I think Lindsey should focus on judiciary. He ought to find out about what happened with Comey, what happened with McCabe, Lisa, what happened with Peter Strzok, what happened with President Obama, what happened with Brennan. That's what Lindsey ought to focus on. That's what the people of South Carolina want him to focus on. The people of South Carolina don't want us to get into a war with Turkey, a NATO member, or with Syria. Let them fight their own wars. They've been fighting for 1,000 years. Let them fight their own wars. The people of South Carolina want to see those troops come home. And I want an election based on that. And that's the way it is, whether it's good or bad. That's the way it is.
This is Trump's reaction as he continues to shed support from his own party after his completely misguided decision to abandon the Kurds. Because not only did the Kurds lead the way in defeating ISIS, an accomplishment that Trump himself has taken credit for, but they lost over 11,000 of their own soldiers, men and women, in the process. Which is why it's especially disheartening that Trump would dig in his heels and take an outright adversarial position against them.
And Syria also has a relationship with the Kurds, who, by the way, are no angels, okay? Who is an angel? There aren't too many around.
Now, Trump has conflated the Syrian Kurds, who, as part of the Kurdish People's Protection Unit, or YPG, joined forces with other Syrian minority groups to create the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, a Turkish Kurdish separatist group that the Turks have been fighting for decades to stop them from creating an independent Kurdistan. And this is important because Turkish President Erdogan is dead set against an independent state. So when Trump took a call with Erdogan last week, chances are that the Turkish president likely convinced Trump that it wasn't in the United States' best interest to protect the Kurds, when in reality, it's only Turkey's interest that it serves. But the fact is, Trump would rather defer to an authoritarian than even our own allies, which he's shown on countless occasions. And beyond that, Trump has a financial interest in catering to Turkey, where there are the Trump Towers in Istanbul. But don't take my word for it.
Well, I have a little conflict of interest because I have a major building in Istanbul. And it's a tremendously successful job. It's called Trump Towers, 2 towers instead of 1. Not the usual 1, it's 2. And I've gotten to know Turkey very well. And they're amazing people. They're incredible people. They have a strong leader.
But beyond Trump's conflict of interest and his longing to please authoritarians and dictators, there's also the fact that abandoning the Kurds was pointless. This isn't about bringing American troops home. The White House just sent 1,800 troops to Saudi Arabia last week. It didn't end any endless wars as Trump's been claiming. In fact, it likely exacerbated a conflict that was completely under control when the Americans served as a firewall for the Kurds in Syria. So Trump can claim that Lindsey Graham just wants to fight other people's wars for the next 1,000 years in the Middle East, but this is clear-cut proof of how ignorant Trump is when it comes to our foreign policy. Because when ISIS inevitably strengthens as the result of Trump's decision and tries to once again attack the United States, it's not only going to be our problem, but we won't even have allies in the region because of what we just did to the Kurds. In other words, any way you cut it, this is a loss for the United States and a win for Turkey and their allies, Iran and Russia. Trump then condescends to Graham by suggesting that he not focus on the worst foreign relations decision in decades, but instead spend his time looking into Republican conspiracy theories meant to deflect from Trump's own wrongdoing. He wheels off any name he can think of that isn't his, from Comey to McCabe to even former President Obama, in a desperate effort to absolve himself. And incredibly, even his conspiracy theories are meant to serve our enemies. Trump is in the process of trying to debunk the Russia investigation by claiming that Democratic politicians were behind the whole thing. Now, never mind that James Comey and Andrew McCabe are registered Republicans, but Trump's goal is to prove that Russia had no hand in meddling in our election, which, to be clear, they did. But if he could convince himself by whatever backwards methods he's using that they didn't interfere, including Trump's own appeal to Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and Attorney General Bill Barr's trip to Italy, he can use it as justification to lift sanctions on Russia, which has been Putin's goal all along. And I know it's probably difficult to believe that Trump is doing Putin's bidding in the United States, but just Try to wrap your head around it. The truth is that Trump doesn't know how to govern other than to capitulate to the strongmen and dictators whom he so admires. And while it's promising that Lindsey Graham and others might be waking up to the distinct possibility that they've been emboldening an absolute fool for the last 3 years, had they not been so blinded by their partisanship, they might have seen it before allowing Trump to decimate our foreign policy. But what this all shows, if nothing else, is that Republicans can't be trusted to govern without catering to our enemies and putting lives at risk.